more people than I was expecting. So I'm feeling quite excited, and there's a part of me that feels a little nervous. So I'd just like to start with reading something. And before I do that, I'll share my screen so you can read it with me. And then I'll go into a little bit of sharing. And then after that, I would like to just do a short process with somebody, about 20 or 30 minutes. So I'll invite somebody who's willing to come forward, and we'll spotlight you, and then we'll do a short process so that those witnessing can get a deeper understanding of what it is that I'm sharing. And then we'll come back for some questions and sharing on how that was. So it's by Matt Licata and Jeff Foster. Forget about healing your shame today. Instead, find the ashamed one. Go to the one who feels unworthy and broken. Invite in the one who feels sick and unlovable, and bring him out of hiding. Lead her out of the darkness and into the light of compassionate awareness. Find her in the belly, the chest, the throat. Flood him with light, curiosity, and care. With this tender awareness that seeks not to fix but understand, not to mend but embrace, not to annihilate but soothe and reparent. Hold your shame close, like a mother holding her precious child, and ask, my love, do you need to be healed today? And listen carefully. Listen from the depths of your soul now. Listen to his or her timeless response as it emerges out of the thundering silence of meditation. Not healed today, mother, only held. Yeah, so I chose this piece because, it really kind of underlines what it is that I would like to share today. And it's connected to internal family systems, which I've been trained in and practicing for some time, and yet is still very much aligned with what we're doing in NVC. So I see very many crossovers. It's just that internal family systems has helped me to expand the map a little bit more, to get more understanding of a little bit more nuance, a little bit more detail to the map. I always used to say, before I knew internal family systems, that NVC was a map to the inner world. And I still believe that it is. And yet some maps can be less detailed. And IFS has just added another layer of detail to that map, another layer of understanding of what this inner world looks like. So yeah, that part about not healing or not trying to heal, this is a very important aspect of it for me, because the moment I'm trying to heal, then I'm trying to do something, and that the natural healing is then hindered. Just like if I had to cut my hand, I don't really have to think about it healing. It just heals itself. I don't have to sit and look at it and think, heal, 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 heal. It just heals by itself. So there's something about nature that is moving towards wholeness, always moving towards healing. And what happens is that there's parts of me that get in the way, that obstruct that possibility. So I'll just go back to my little presentation here, because I think I can explain it a little bit more clearly if I can show you in that. There we go. So this is from Dick Schwartz, and I think his name's Bob Falconer. Most of us have learned to believe that a person has but one mind, and that our many thoughts and feelings emanate from a unitary personality. Multiplicity transports us from the conception of the human mind as a single unit to seeing it as a system of interacting minds. So having read that, I'd just like to pose a question to the group, and you can just put your hand up. I'm curious, who of you would see yourselves as having multiple personalities? I'm seeing some kind of half and half. Number of pages here. Yeah. So I have on my screen, I can see 3 pages of people. And out of everyone on my screen, I'm seeing maybe just over half of one of the pages. So that, I guess that's just over 1/6. Maybe it's going up now. Yeah. So this is certainly something that I wasn't comfortable with, at least. This acknowledgement that I may have multiple personalities, because it was so heavily judged in my culture, in my upbringing. You know, if somebody behaved in 2 very different ways, we would have the label, although the label doesn't actually describe what was going on, but we'd have the label that they were schizophrenic, schizo, that would be it. So schizo, this person, you know. And if somebody was just like really solid, like just the same behavior, you could really rely on them, you could really count on them to not change, then that would be really valued. So I was doing my best to be this really solid, singular person, to have the same reactions wherever I went, no matter what was happening. And that created so much inattention in me. This trying to be somebody that the people around me were expecting, my culture, my family, and it was only when I actually learned about internal family systems and began to relax into the idea that it might not only be okay that I have multiple personalities, but actually completely normal. And yeah, I'm not talking about multiple personality disorder. I'm talking about us having many different aspects of ourselves. So I can give an example of that. You might have one part of yourself or one aspect of yourself that really wants to eat some chocolate, for example. And another aspect of yourself that is saying something like, yeah, you shouldn't eat chocolate, you eat too much chocolate, it's bad for you. So you've got one part that just wants to kick back, relax, have some pleasure, some enjoyment, you know. This part wanting to meet needs. And another part that is looking for health and well-being that's going, no, don't eat the chocolate. And for some reason, the one part that says eat the chocolate takes over, and you eat the chocolate. And then you eat another piece of chocolate and another piece of chocolate. And before you know it, you've eaten more chocolate than you actually would have liked. And then a third part comes in, criticizing part, that starts saying, it's all the same with you. You'll never learn. So just taking some time to look inside of myself, I've discovered and I can confirm that I have these multiple different parts in me, and many of them, not just 3, but yeah, on average, people have between about 11 and 30, but this is no defined number. I'm just wanting to check something. I'm seeing a couple hands up, and I'm wondering if that's because you have questions or your hands are still up from the previous question. No response. I'm guessing it's still from previously. So let me just go back to my sharing. This is a small quote from Carl Jung. The so-called unity of consciousness is an illusion. We like to think that we are one, but we are not. So even Carl Jung was recognizing the multiplicity of our minds. And what we mostly see, what we mostly show to the outside world are these protective aspects of ourselves. So now we're in the NVC community at the moment, and I guess many of us have been in workshops and retreats where we have the opportunity to show more vulnerable parts of us. So this would be like this young child inside you. And yet people who have not yet come to NVC or have not been doing much inner work, most of us are just showing our protectors to the outside world, these parts of us that maybe criticize ourselves or others, might be addicted to food, substances, social media, work, relationships, sex, might dissociate, zone out, daydream, might be people-pleasing or perfectionist, might be trying really hard to do well, it might be workaholic, something like that. And these protective parts are mostly in layers and often are polarized against each other. And underneath those protective parts, we have these more vulnerable parts. So these, what I would call an exile, a part of us, an inner child or one of our inner children who's been pushed away into the shadows, into the subconscious, that's been potentially wounded as we were younger. So when we're growing up, we experience, all of us, we experience things that have our needs not being met. So even people growing up in the most loving families, at some point, something will happen and our needs won't be met. And if that part of us that had its needs not met at that moment in time is not met with openness and compassion and care and love, and those unmet needs and feelings are heard, then what can happen is that a protective part will take over and try to prevent this from ever happening again. Try to make sure that this part of us that's vulnerable, this innocent part of us, is never wounded again, or is never allowed to feel that wounding again. And these protective parts then go with us all the way into adulthood. So when I speak of the art of self-love, it's not just loving these inner children, which a lot of process work is focused on, is on getting to this inner child work or the inner children and giving space to them, listening to them, hearing them, which is all part of the healing process. But what is, for me, what has been very transformative for me is to realize that all of these protective parts are also needing to be met with love and compassion, are also needing to be heard. So what very often happens is that when where I call it therapeutic coaching, and I'll share a little bit about it now, but why I call it that, when I meet with somebody, they'll come to me because they have some kind of pattern in their life that they want to get rid of. So there's something that's going on that they don't like, and they wish that would stop. And they really just want to get rid of that aspect of themselves. And there's two things that are true for me. One of them is that we cannot get rid of these parts of us. So these parts of us are actually different aspects of the ego, different parts of our ego. And if we didn't have these parts, then we would not be able to function in the world anymore. So we need these parts. We need what is in spiritual traditions known as the ego in order to function. But when this ego or these different parts of us are in extreme roles, so extreme roles being addiction, dissociation, for example, then that is not as functional as we would like. So these people would then, someone would then come to me saying, hey, I want to get rid of my addiction. I don't want to be addicted anymore. And then the tendency is to want to, as many therapists do, is to want to help this person to get rid of the addiction so that they can be happy again, which is it's very natural for me to want to do that because we want to support one another. And yet, what has really been fascinating for me is that when you can listen to that part of you, in this case of addiction, for example, that is addicted, the part of you that is choosing to watch social media more than you would enjoy, or to, in extreme cases, use drugs, but it might be to do more exercise than you need, it might be to work more than you need. When you can really listen to that part of you, you begin to hear that that part of you has the best intentions. It's really, really just wanting to support you in some way, and it's doing it in the best way that it knows how. So this is for us in the NVC community, knowing how to listen for feelings and needs. This is really supportive, to be able to listen to these different parts of us and to listen for their feelings and needs, to be able to hear what are their feelings and needs. And I'll just say one more thing, and then I'd like to open up to hearing if there's any questions. So coming back to that piece by Jeff and Matt, the question is then, who is listening to who? So where am I, if there's all these parts, then who's listening? And the one that is listening is not one of the parts. That's it. So the me that is not a part. And many people that I've worked with and heard from have no idea what that is, because they have had so many events in their life which mean that their protective layers are so strong that they've never actually had access to that, or very rarely had access to that. But that, what in IFS is called self-energy, with a capital S, is really something that Robert Gonzalez would have framed the place where the beauty of needs exists. So the abundance of needs. So it's this energy that I can be in when I am full with trust, full with compassion, full with care and clarity and connectedness. And it's not the place of met or unmet needs. It's always full with compassion. It's always filled with connection. It's always filled with trust. It's not that I have to fill it up or I have to try and be compassionate. It's just there. As these parts relax back and step away and step back, then the self-energy begins to be revealed. So just like on a very cloudy day, it's not that the sun no longer exists. But as the clouds begin to part, then the sun is revealed. The sun was there all along. Just as in that way, self is always there. It can't be, our pure essence can't be damaged. It's the essence of who we are. It cannot be damaged. And yet these parts of us can be wounded. So when I'm listening to these parts of myself from this place, there's no distinction between which is a good part and which is a bad part, which part needs to be gotten rid of or changed and which doesn't. there's just openness, there's just love, there's just compassion. And there's just holding space, just being present too. And in that space, the healing happens naturally. So this is what I would call self-love, is that it's this being in this place of love and witnessing these parts of me that may have been wounded in the past. Yeah. So I have a part that comes up that has some concern that this has been a lot of information and that it might be confusing. And I would just like to do a check-in and see how you're doing, what's coming up for you. Are there any questions? What you would maybe call the negative part would be the strategy. So in NVC, we have the strategy and needs. Yeah. So the strategy of these parts is maybe not always life-serving. So it's a part that has chosen addiction, or has chosen, let's not call it addiction, has chosen to use some kind of substance as a strategy. And that part is trying to meet needs. So the base intention of the part is to fulfill some needs. So by listening to what those needs are, I can get clarity on what it is that this part is actually trying to do for me. So needs are life-serving. So this part is trying to serve life. And the best strategy that it currently has, out of desperation, is to use some kind of substance. So I can just share a little bit about my own experience. At some time ago, in kind of early to mid-20s, I did experience some addiction. It was not strong enough that I was a burden on society. I was still working, but there was some substances that I was addicted to that I was really struggling to stop. And the part of me that was choosing for that, was a part that didn't want me to feel the pain anymore. So there were these other parts of me that were in pain because of past experiences. And those parts were exiled. So like in that image, there would be that young child in the middle of the face, like really pushed away. And every time something happened and one of those parts began to emerge to the surface and I began to feel the pain that this part was feeling, this other protective part would go like, hey, marijuana. And I'd go and smoke. And the moment I smoked, that would relax and I wouldn't feel that pain anymore. So it was trying to serve me in trying to support me to not have to feel that pain, to not have to go through that again. And it was just doing it in the best way that it knew how. And many people who are addicted to substances, but let's say more seriously addicted, often report back that if this part of them didn't use this as a strategy, then the next strategy to get away from the pain would be suicide. So if you look at it in that context as well, it's really life-serving, but the strategy might not be. And it's going to continue to use that strategy until what it's protecting has been rescued in some way. You could say rescued, until that part is no longer in danger. So these exiled parts, like this inner child, are often still stuck in that situation. They're still there in that moment when that, whatever it was, happened. And when I can meet and listen to that part from my self energy, from this compassionate, loving place, then I can support that part to be heard in the way that it was never heard before. So this is, I guess, where the term reparenting comes, so where this young part of 6 years old really needed a parent to hear it, I can be the one that now is the parent to this child and then invite that child to come out of that situation, to come back here and be with me. And then, yeah, the word healing is otherwise known as wholeness, and I can, move back to wholeness, reintegrate this part that has all of these beautiful qualities. This young part has all of these beautiful qualities of innocence, playfulness, but it's lost them because it was injured or wounded and has been neglected. Yeah, something like that. The first thing is to recognize that what is doing the hating is another part. And that part also needs to be heard. That part is also doing that for a reason, is wanting to meet needs. So the strategy is hating. So for example, I might have a part that's very critical about my addictive part. That's wrong, that's bad, you're going to kill yourself, you're going to hurt yourself. That's, you're such a loser, you're never going to learn. These might be some of the words of this critical part that's criticizing this addictive part. But when I go beneath the criticism, which is a strategy, and listen to the needs beneath that, then what I would hear is, I just want you to be well. So it's this need for health and well-being. I just want you to be safe. I want you to live in ease. I want you to be able to be connected to other people. When you're high on marijuana, it's hard for you to connect. I want you to be able to be connected. So the hating is also another part of me that's needing to be heard. So our inner critics, it seems so strange, but our inner critics are also trying to serve us. And it's when I can meet my inner critic from a place of love that something is more likely to shift. So the moment there's an agenda or a wanting something or a strategy, then it becomes clear to me that that's a part of me. And what I can do is I can ask that part to give me a little bit of space so that I can meet it. Just like I could meet one of you now and offer you empathy, that I meet this part and offer it empathy. Yeah, I'm seeing there in the chat, somebody said there are no bad parts. That's it. Dick Schwartz wrote a book called No Bad Parts. And in his 40 years of doing this work and all the people that he's worked with, hundreds, maybe thousands of therapists who do this work, in all the therapy sessions I've offered, I've yet to meet a bad part. Every single part has a positive intention, which in NVC terms we can translate into is trying to fulfill a need. Yeah, so I would love to just do a short process to just guide somebody through getting to know some of their parts. So just invite anybody who would be willing to come into the front and be highlighted to just bring something, a part that you don't like, a part of you, an aspect of you that you don't like. So if you are maybe shy and you don't like that, or maybe you have some kind of small addictions and you don't like that, or maybe you're very kind of loud and walk into a room and just say things that you don't enjoy. Maybe you don't like that. Some part of you that you don't like. And just for clarity, we are recording and I will double check with you after this, triple check with you if you're willing to have it used. And if not, I will delete it. It will not go any further than this. So just wanting to add that as a layer of safety. Yeah. So, seeing Margaret, your hand's up. Is that to be in the process? Yep. So if there's anybody else who would be interested, please put your hand up now and then we can do a short decision-making process to see how we'll decide. Okay. So, Margaret, are you willing to share with me what it is that you would like to work with?
Perfectionistic part of me.
Okay. Okay, so let's see. Paulina, do you know how to pin us? Spotlight us, yes.
Yeah.
You could do that, would be great.
Yeah, you're spotlighted and Margaret.
Okay, great. So I'm seeing that, yeah, we have just under an hour left. So maybe we'll spend about 20 minutes for this process, maximum, so 25 minutes. My request to the rest of you is to see while you're listening, if you can notice what parts come up in you. So you might notice the part of you that comes up that feels irritated by what's happening or starts to feel impatient because it's taking too long. You might notice that there's a part of you that comes up that is really wanting to help or to fix it or whatever. See if you can notice these parts coming up in you, and then see if you can just invite them to relax back and bring as much of the self energy to the space. So this energy of trust and openness, compassion. Okay. Yeah, so Margaret, before we go into the process, I'm wondering what's going on in you now, just as you think about yourself being here in front of, what is it now, 77 people, and being witnessed by so many people going into this process in yourself. How is that for you?
Fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fear and the desire to get it right,
Mm-hmm.
to do it the right way, like that perfectionistic part of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this, what's going on for you now is very much connected to what you would like to work with. Yeah. So thank you. So we can jump into that in a minute. Just want to share a few more. Just share something more. I might take some notes.
Yeah, of course.
So if you see me looking down, and my notes are not any evaluation on what you're saying. It's just really for me to track what parts are coming up, because sometimes people have numerous parts emerging, and if I can just make notes of each of them, that helps me to track it.
Yeah, even when you were talking about the audience listening or the other participants, like I recognize a lot of those points that tie into my perfection and like wanting to fix people,
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like, and to do it the right way and to say the right thing and to be there for people the right way. So yeah, mm-hmm. There are a lot of parts all in one part.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's just start with this part of you that you call perfectionist. It's part of you that wants to do it right. Yeah. Can you remember a situation in the not too distant past where this part was present? Just choose one situation. So it can be even now. It might be there's something else. Just choose one situation.
Yeah. You want me to share the situation or just?
That's not necessary. No, it's just for you to maybe just recall that situation. And as you do that, just recall it a number of times. And as you do that, see if you can connect to where you experience or how you experience this part of you. It might be coming up as a feeling, might be coming up as an image, might even be coming up as kind of sensation slightly outside of your body.
Definitely sensations. A lot in my chest. A feeling of fear of speaking, because it might be the wrong thing and make things worse. But a fear of being quiet too. Like almost like, yeah, you don't know what to do. So this real panic, fear, that no matter what you do won't work. It'll not work out.
Yeah. So how would it be for you just to let this part of you know that you hear how scared it is, how afraid it is to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing?
Just that little bit of compassion I gave it
Mm.
can feel some settling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you say you're feeling compassion towards it. Maybe you can let it feel that compassion. Just let that resonate out towards it.
It was listening to your words of letting it be, recognizing what it wanted or whatever, and it somehow just that sort of affirmed it, so it felt like compassion.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I'm wondering if you can make any guesses to what this part might be needing. So it's feeling
Safety.
fear. Yeah. So just reflect that back to it as well. Just really getting that you need to be safe.
Yeah.
And how is it for this part to receive that from you?
I'm not too sure about the part, but it's painful for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm recognizing that the need to be perfect is to be accepted and loved. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm not perfect, then I won't be.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore I'm not safe. Like I'm going to be attacked or hurt or damaged in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm seeing that touches something in you.
Yeah.
And it's this part that's also needing that. Is that it? Just check that needing acceptance and love.
Yeah, the part is trying to protect me
Mm.
from the pain of rejection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's trying to, I would say, push me towards being better, like to be a better person so that I'm accepted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can reflect that back as well, that you hear how much this part longs to support you in being accepted, in being loved. What happens when you do that?
There's a bit of an opening,
Mm-hmm.
but still some fear.
Mm-hmm.
Fear that if there's not that part pushing me to be better, that I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So you're relaxing into it, but not able to just completely relax.
Yeah, sure. This part's not yet ready to relax, because my guess is that it might be protecting a part of you that believes that it's not good enough. Yeah. Does that make sense to you? I see you nodding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I internalized that message as a child that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't loved or wasn't accepted. And it was me. I'm not saying my parents did anything wrong. It was how I internalized my situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I just want to really keep moving slowly and just spend time with this one part that was feeling fear for now. And we'll see where that leads to, just so we can really, so you can get to know it a little better. How do you, so when you put your attention on this part that feels fear, how do you feel towards it? What's your experience as you look at it right now?
There's part of me that's grateful, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I guess because there isn't a lot of trust with the outside world, because I've been hurt so much.
Yeah, yeah. So something about being grateful that this part is protecting you in this way. So how about letting it know that? Just give it that message.
There's a sense of gratitude from the part that I'm finally recognizing its goodness.
I think I missed a little bit. It's the sense of gratitude from the part.
From
because
the part,
it's
yeah.
finally being recognized. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And how's that for you?
It feels more connecting,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not trying to push it away.
Yeah, yeah. So there's some understanding and some connection to it. Yeah.
Yeah, some acceptance of it as an ally and not an enemy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So no longer trying to get rid of it, but realizing that it's doing its best to support you in the best way it can. Yeah. I'm curious about something. Could you ask this part how old it is? So what is its age? Just wait for the answer to come from the part itself.
I think it's right from what I was born, not very long after I was born.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
65 years.
Mm-hmm. So it's very young.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So it's been doing this job of protecting you for a very long time then. And how does it feel about that, having been, does it feel that it's been doing this for so long?
It's tired.
Mm-hmm. So just reflect that back to it. Let it know that you hear how tired it is.
It's exhausted. It wants to have a holiday, let go. It feels overwhelmed, overburdened with responsibility.
Yeah. So could you just reflect that back as well? Let it know that you've heard all of that.
So I'm hearing it say it's exhausted. It wants a rest. It wants a holiday. It wants to let go of this burden of responsibility.
Yeah. So I was just wanting to double check. So you reflected that back to the part itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how was it for this part to receive this reflection from you?
There was a part of it saying it's about time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been doing this for so long.
Yeah. I'm so scared of going the self-judgment here about it, but there's something telling me, like, you needed me as that little infant, feeling you weren't loved. And when you were a child, but you can take care of yourself now. So why are you still using me? Say I'm not too sure judgment or not.
Yeah. And let's just check something first. Is this is coming from this part and not another part? Just
it feels like it's coming from that part, but
yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just taking a moment just to check, double check with myself where we're going to go from here, because I just want to see how we're going to respond. Just one moment. Okay. Yeah. So I'm not hearing that as a judgment. I'm hearing that as this part longing for you to take back leadership. Yeah. That it's longing for you to be the leader in your system so that it can relax back into a supporting role. Does that fit?
Yeah, no, it does fit. Just that I've been so self-critical that another part of me guards myself from being self-critical. Like, I'm becoming more and more aware of that self-critical part as well.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why but yeah, no, that sounds right.
Yeah. Okay. So is there anything more that this part would like to share with you? This part that we've been working with? Anything more that it would like you to know?
Yeah, it's saying that it would like to see me step into my power and take some of that power back. And yet it's also saying, like, I will be here if you need me. I'm not leaving you. I'm still a part of you. But it's time for you to step forward. like a loving parent,
Mhm.
releasing the child when they're old enough to leave home with joy and sorrow, like, sorrow that they're losing them, but joy that they've found their wings to fly. But they're also saying, even though you're leaving me, know that you have a safe place to come back to. I'm
Mhm.
still here.
Mhm. Yeah, and how's that for you?
Feels really good.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So my guess is that I got some hints from what I was hearing you say, that this part is protecting something. And we don't have enough time for it now. But I imagine that this part will still be doing some of the work that it's been doing in this way, until that what it's been protecting is no longer needing to be protected in the same way. Yeah, so maybe we could finish with you making an agreement with this part. Maybe you can make an agreement to come back to it in whichever way works for you. So it might be with support from somebody else, or it might even be in your meditations, but just to let it know that you'll come back and give it some more time and space at some point.
I promise you, my perfectionistic part, that now that we have opened this conversation between us, I will continue it in journaling and perhaps with an empathy buddy. And I thank you for connecting with me. And I hope we continue to stay in connection with each other.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. Okay, is it okay for you if we start to wrap up? And yeah, so before we move on, I just want to check, how was that for you, that process?
It felt healing.
Mm-hmm.
Always scared because I've struggled for many, many years at therapy and all sorts of things. And sometimes I can feel some relief and then get plunged back into depression,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, whatever. But no, it felt good. And thank you. Thank you for your willingness to work with me and gentleness in leading me, and reflection, which made me feel I was being heard and seen. So thank you.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Margaret. How is it? Yeah, would it be a good time now to invite everybody back? And
I would love to hear if it touched anybody else.
yeah, that was my next question. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm just going to invite you all back, and curious if that touched you in any way, if you would enjoy sharing that. I would really love to hear it. And I heard Margaret would also love that. So seeing a number of hearts, Margaret, as well. Okay. So there's something else that came up that I would like to share. At the end, Margaret, you spoke about a relapse, these things coming back. So you work on something and then it comes back again. Yeah, how I understand it, and this is what sometimes happens, is that we can sometimes in processes get to these exiled or wounded parts, these young parts of us that have been pushed away for so long, and we dive into a process, and suddenly this young child that was neglected or was spanked or was shouted at or was forgotten emerges, and we can listen to this part of us, and there's a lot of emotion that arises, and get the idea that there's been a shift or a change, and maybe that shift or change is there temporarily, and then suddenly there's a relapse going back to the to what was there before. And how I see it is that what is happening is that there hasn't been, first of all, connection with the protective parts that were protecting that part, and buy-in from those protective parts. So it's, yeah, I like to use kind of analogies. It's something like, if you've got a dog that's protecting, let's say, a young child, and this dog is very kind of vicious and doing its best to protect this child. And then through some kind of act of fate, the dog wasn't looking for a moment, and you somehow managed to get to this child. And you gave this child some attention and some love and whatever. And then all of a sudden, the child starts crying. The dog gets into a panic and attacks you. So this analogy is this child being one of our inner children and the dog being a protective part of us. If that dog didn't have the buy-in to start with, if you haven't befriended that dog to start with, the moment the child gets wounded again, the dog attacks. So this is the addiction comes back, or the depression comes back, or the perfectionism comes back again. Because this protective part is saying, like, hang on a minute, you've rescued this exiled part, this part that was wounded, and now it's getting hurt again. And now I'm going to need to work even harder. So it's sometimes that the relapse can be even more intense. So before, you might have had mild addiction, and that addiction gets even worse afterwards, because this protective part digs its heels in even deeper and says, right, now I'm certainly not going to let this happen again. So this is what I love about this process, is really taking time, call it befriending, but to connect with and listen to the needs of these protective parts. This is what I call self-love. It's loving these parts of ourselves that have for so long got a bad rap, like in Margaret's case, so long having these judgments of this perfectionism, and realizing that this perfectionism is actually in service. Perfectionism being a strategy for this part to meet its needs. Okay, so I'm wondering if there's any questions that are arising right now regarding the process itself, or anything else that I've shared. Yes, Margaret.
Yeah, no, you talked about the exile, and I know I've read a little bit about that, but don't understand it fully. So the protective part of me, the exile for me may have been my inner child. It was wounded. Would that be, or is it something different? I'm not too sure about that, the exile.
Yeah. So the part that we were working with was a protective part. So a part that has perfectionism as a strategy. And that part was also very young. So you checked in with it, and it was not long after birth that this part appeared. So you could also call that an inner child as well. So one of the inner children. But for some reason, that part came online. So something happened and that part came online. And it could be one of two things. One of them is, it could be that you as a child experienced something, and this protective part came online and started using perfection as a strategy to make sure that never happened again. And it could also be that a part of you took on some belief that is held in your family. So that would be otherwise known as a legacy burden, some kind of burden, some kind of belief, some kind of emotion of shame, or the belief that came up that I heard was I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And that could be something that's carried in your family that was passed down to you from a parent, which was passed down from one of their parents. So potentially, yeah. So if we took time to listen to the part of you carrying the burden of I'm not good enough, then we would get some clarity. Did that come from an experience that that part had, or did that come from one of your family members?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, it was just when you mentioned the protective part might, if it recedes and then it sees the exile is not protected, and I was just curious, but yeah, we didn't go there. You sort of clarified. So that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarity.
Yeah, so I was seeing a question here. Wait, hang on a minute. Just disappeared. Are parts real entities with their own lives inside our body? Or is this a model or metaphor to help understand our feelings and needs? So the answer is I have no idea. At least that's my answer. When I go inside, I recognize that I have a number of parts. And I certainly have one part that comes up very often in my own processes that says something like, this is all bullshit and you're making it up. And when I can ask that part to step aside, then it's once again very clear to me that there's different parts, different aspects. But I certainly have a part that very much doubts that this is real, that just jumps in many, many processes going, this is all bullshit. So I can't say with any certainty that I know. There's no like certain definite like yes, because it's so subjective. But one of the things that gives me a clue that we might be onto something, or at least Dick Schwartz might be onto something, is that MAPS is in the US is currently doing research with patients with PTSD using MDMA. And it just so happens that the person running the research is also trained in internal family systems. Part of the research is that they are not allowed to offer any type of therapy. So they just need to give the medication and then just wait and just be present. And the researcher, whose name I can't remember, has reported back that these ex-military people do spontaneous parts processes. So very much similar to IFS process, they do that spontaneously when having used MDMA. And the results have been very promising of these trials. So if that gives any more clarity that this is something real, then it certainly supports me. And yet I still certainly have a part that goes like, I don't know. Yeah. Well, one of them would be working with somebody who can support you in that. And the other is, yeah. I'm just trying to look at what angle I'm going to approach this from. So it's different for different people. That's it. Working alone is different for different people. So some people report back being able to very easily hold space for their different parts. And other people, it's just no access. It's just not possible. So even Dick Schwartz has said that for him it's too difficult and that he needs somebody to support him. And other people who just started on this journey have very, very clear images of their parts coming up, and it's very easy for them. So what has been very supportive for me is writing, is journaling. So so there's a number of ways to do it. Let's see if I can just grab a page here. And one of the ways that I enjoy is to do something like this. And then, yeah, to start by listening to a part that's alive in you in this moment, and giving that part space. So it might be that you feel some anxiety in your stomach. So just to bring your focus to that place in your stomach and to listen, and then to just put onto the page whatever you're hearing that part of you say. So it might be saying something like, it's dangerous. Nobody's going to love me. I feel so anxious, you know, and you can start writing that down. And then you might have another part that goes, you know, something like, yeah, it's always the same with you, you know, you're never going to learn. And then you might put that into another V. So that would be a start for me, just to start mapping out these different parts. Another one that is really supportive as a starting point is art. So drawing, well, I wouldn't even call it art, really. It's just allowing each part to express itself on a page. So yeah, without trying to be artistic or anything. Connecting to a part, listening to what it has to say, really trying to find where does it live in you, sometimes even around your body. So sometimes I'll have a part that lives just behind. I actually have one that used to be very critical, that looked like a hand that was here behind my head. And you can just represent that part on the page using some colored pencils or pens. And then there might be other parts that are relating to that part in different ways, and you can represent them also on the page and how they relate to one another. Yeah. Those are two ways that have been supportive for me, that are quite easily accessible and don't require many, many hours of experience in meditation and mindfulness. Yeah.